Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to another medical projects webinar. Hope everybody is okay this evening. My name is Mark Williams. I work here at Medical Projects and we help students on their journey to medical school. We've been running these webinars for the past year, basically since the first lockdown happened last year. And we think that students have found them really useful. So we hope that you're going to find this one useful this evening. We're going to be talking about how much work experience students need to get on their journey to medical school. There's lots of reasons why kind of work experience is important. There's lots of reasons why you need it, lots of times where you need it along that journey as well. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about that, and we're going to talk a little bit about how much as well, because it's one of those questions that we get asked all the time is, do I have enough work experience? So we just thought we'd kind of dedicate a bit of a webinar to that this evening. And we're joined by Debbie as well, who's a Newcastle University medical student. Are you there, Debbie? Hello.
I am. Hello.
How are you doing? You okay?
Good, thank you. Right.
So do you want to just kind of give everybody a super brief introduction to you and kind of why you think it's important that we should be kind of talking about work experience as well?
Absolutely. So hi everyone, I'm Debbie and I'm a fifth year medical student. I keep saying fourth. I'm a fifth year medical student on Newcastle. I'm currently into Colayton at the moment. So I've taken a year out to do a master's. So work experience with medical school is very important because it helps show you what medicine is like and if you're a good fit for medicine as well. But it's also great at like teaching you skills that you would like, skills that you might have but not know you have, or like, skills that you probably wouldn't learn anywhere else. But yeah, I'll talk more about that as we go on.
Right, cool. I'll just go through a couple of kind of housekeeping things before we kind of jump into and before I hand over to you, Debbie. Okay. Just to let everyone know, we will finish this before 8 o'clock, mainly because there's a football match on 8 o'clock and I will definitely want to be watching that because it's the Euros. And we don't want to take up too much of everybody else's evenings as well. So yeah, we'll be done by 8 o'clock. We'll send a recording of the slides out probably tomorrow. And a copy of this will be on our YouTube channel as well. So if there's anything that you want to catch up on this webinar or any of our past webinars, I think there's probably about 20, 25 webinars we've done. They're all on the YouTube channel. We will use the Q&A section or the Q&A tool at the end. So don't put any questions in the chat because we won't look at those. We only look at the Q&A. We use the upvote system for the Q&A system as well. So if somebody else has already asked a question that you want answering as well, just hit the thumbs up button, brings us to the top. We know which is the most popular. And we'll have a couple of polls now as well, just to kind of make sure that everybody's interactive. It's a bit more interactive, and it also gives us an idea of who's watching, so we can kind of tailor the conversation as well. So first one, we'll just launch this up. Oh, that's moving the screen around. Nope, I can't. Oh, there we go. There we go. Is that on the screen? I think that's on the screen. Yeah, I can see people are voting. So this is just to kind of give us an idea of how many people have watched our webinars before. If you kind of come back, then that's fantastic. If it's your first one, that's also fantastic. It's good to have you with us. So I'll give everyone a couple more seconds with that. And I can share the results as well, so you guys can see as well. It's all anonymous. So 42% brand new, welcome to you guys, and everybody else, welcome back. I really appreciate you joining us again. And the next poll is, if I can access it properly. The screen sharing makes it quite difficult to bring the polls up, so give me 1 second. Cool. And this is just so we understand what stage or kind of what year you are at as well. It just helps us kind of tailor the content a bit better. So it looks like most people are year 12, which is kind of what we'd expect because you've got a busy summer ahead, especially when it comes to the work experience side of things. So end poll and share results just so everyone else can see as well. Yeah, so just over 60% are in year 12, 32% in year 11. So that's awesome. You're making a really good head start by thinking about your work experience already. So good stuff. Okay, cool. So if I can try and move this polls out of the way. There we go. Cool. Right, I'll hand it over to you, Debbie, and then I'll jump back in at the Q&A time, or if there's anything else you need, just give me a shout as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, hi everyone. So, like we're here to talk about how much work experience you need for medical school today. So, I think you can't have too little experience ever. Anything you do is obviously useful, or you can learn from it. And like this little box says that it's about the quality and not the quantity. But when we're talking about quality, we're talking about like the quality of your reflection of your experiences. So, and it's something everyone says, like reflect on your work experience, but it actually absolutely helps because you don't realize how much you've learned until you go over it and you think about the things like that you've seen, the things you saw the doctors do, the things you saw like the admin team do, the things you saw the like the multidisciplinary team, the MDT do. So that's really helpful going over it. So I might be looking now just because I've got notes down and I would make sure that I've got them all. So it could help to write down your reflections, like just writing them out, making sure that you know that you don't, as soon as you've done it, you can take some time, ruminate over it, and then just write it out. And how you reflect is not just writing what you've seen, it's also about writing how it made you feel, for example, because reflections are quite personal. So it's how it made you feel. It's about how how what you thought you could have taken away from that, what you could did and what happened, what could have gone better, what the team could have done to make the situation better, or like if it was a bad reflection as it is, or like in a good case, like how they dealt with whatever problem was the patient came in. So reflecting allows you to go over your work experience, and then you can take that and apply it to what you've learned in to what your application for medical school and also for your interviews, which is amazing. So I'll give you an example just because I did do some work experience. Also, I got paid to do this. So I got paid for my work experience. So I was at HCA before I started medical school. And it's a bit crazy, but like I remember the first time I was at work and I was like, oh, I want to be a doctor. And that's why I'm here. And the lady was like, oh, but it's just stacking shelves. But that's the thing, it's not, because I learned so much there. And obviously you can progress as well, because it could just be 2 months of that. But you learn you learn how nurses work with the team, and you learn how like physios do their work, how the dietitians do their work, and how how to interact with patients. You learn communication skills, you learn about empathy, you can learn medical skills there as well. I learned how to like take blood and insert cannulas whilst I was working as a HCA. So it's not about what you've done and how much you've done, it's about the quality of what you've taken away from it. So it's not about the skills that you've gained from your work experience. May I have the next slide, please? So talking about work experience is about having a right mix. So both clinical and non-clinical experience can serve you very well. So the reason I say this is because, yet again, you get a view of how other teams work. And as a doctor, you'll be working with several other people in the hospital, like everyone, right from the senior nurses all the way down to the porters, like the people that take patients up and down. And having exposure to all of that gives you a big range. And these are things you can talk about in your personal, like in your interview or your personal statement, because it shows that you have an insight to how the NHS works. It shows that you have an insight to how, how the system, like how patients come into the hospital and how they're like taken care of in there. So it also shows that, like I said, medical schools love teamwork. So always use your buzzwords like teamwork, amazing. They love that. Communication skills, tick. Empathy, tick. Just like skills that you learn, and they just, I want to say, I'm trying to think back on how I felt when I was in my work experience, because yet again, years of reflection. And it's just the skills that will help me in the future, like when I move on away from all the things that like from medical school and that it takes you forward. It's not just about medical school as well. It's also about after medical school and after you graduate and after you become a doctor. So like I said, non-clinical experience is also amazing because you might think that, oh, I need to work in hospital. And I must say it's good to have work experience in hospital and at a GP, but yet again, it's also quite good to have the work experience with like say mental health charity, for example, which could teach you about mental health. And it's something really interesting that the interviewer will talk to you about happily, or with the admin team at the GP. And you can talk about how like patients are seen and how they move through the system. And like it shows you how the admin team, we also like relate to the doctors, which is very helpful. So it's about having a great mix of both clinical and non-clinical experience. And the next slide now, please. So what kind of experience is available to you? So you have hospital experience, like I said, which is it exposes you to all these specialties. It could be emergency, GP, surgery, pediatrics, eyes, brains, anything. It could be absolutely anything. It could be volunteering. So like some people, their work experience is made up of volunteer work, where they go into hospital and they may help to feed patients who can't feed themselves. So in geriatrics, which is like older medicine for older people. So they help patients, like help feed patients during feeding time. And that can be spun around, like you can use that and say, well, I learned empathy about this. You could make very interesting patients there, or like more complex patients who you could talk about in your personal statements or in your interviews. So you can have a whole range. And also put working as a healthcare assistant there. Yeah, again, it might just be a matter of months, but it also exposes you to how it works, not just necessarily shadowing. But I think someone asked about what age you can to become an HCA. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I want to say 18, but yeah, I want to say 18. But yeah, again, there's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with like trying to get that experience, even if it's just the summer, with like the summer coming, or like over like a range of weeks or months. So may I have the next slide, please? And then we've got like GP experience. So you could get experience at a GP where you shadow GPs. Like I said, you shadow the admin team, you shadow the practice nurse, you shadow like a HCA, for example. And that also exposes you to a big range of things. And GP is amazing for exposing you to community medicine, because you see a wider range of cases than you would probably see in the hospital, because everyone goes to their GP first, usually. So you'd see anything from like more chronic diseases like diabetes or COPD to like little like GP surgeries that do surgery, that do actual like minor surgeries in there, for example, get like a great for like exposure into surgery if you can't get into hospital to shadow a surgeon. So that gives you like a big range of cases to see. And then yeah, again, like I said, the admin team shadowing them is great for like you can talk about that and talk about how what it did for you, like communication skills that you learned from the receptionists, for example, or like from the practice manager. And you could also end up getting to sit in on meetings, because the practice manager gets to sit in on like certain types of meetings, like little council meetings. But these obviously would depend on confidentiality, so it might not be possible for you to actually see that. But yet again, you could ask whoever you're shadowing or following about how these things work, and they give you a range of skills that you can absolutely learn. The practice nurse is also great to see, because she deals with, or he, like whoever they are, they deal with a all range of stuff. So they deal with like inhalers, they deal with yet again diabetes, so giving like insulin, they deal with COPD patients, they deal with like pediatrics. So it's a big range of things you get to see there as well. But ultimately, what is important yet again is not about the amount of experience you have, or necessarily about the amount of placements you've done. It's just about what you've learned from it, and what you've taken away from it. Because there is no point listing all the placements you've done and like listing 100 placements, for example, and then you've learned nothing from it. So it's better to show your interviewer or whoever's reading your personal statement that this is what I've learned from my for my placement, because it's easier for them to empathize with you, to see who you are as a person, as opposed to as a list of placements, for example. So yeah, I'd advise, yeah, again, reflect on absolutely all the experience you have. Nothing is too little. So may I have the next slide, please? So yet again, if you can't get experience in a hospital, if you can't get experience in a GP, a care home is another avenue of getting experience. So you could volunteer there, yet again, feeding patients, just generally helping the nurses with like things like beds. So that's really helpful. So you can use that as your personal, as your work experience. And yet again, it's the learning how the team works and like caring for patients and like learning communication skills. So yeah, and you could work as a care assistant in the care home. And yet, like I said, the care home exposes you also to older people who, and they tend to have amazing stories. So you can talk to them and like you can learn things, and they can tell you something really interesting that would end up helping, that you can talk about in your interview, for example. So that's really helpful. So like, for example, I looked after a patient once, and I actually talked about this in my interview when I was speaking to my interviewers. And it was just talking about like, you know, how looking after these patients, you know, helped me to understand like, oh, I didn't want to do like elderly medicine, just because I felt every time a patient like died, I felt so sad and I just couldn't do it. And it's little things like that, just bringing in who you are and how all these experiences made you feel. It adds a personal touch to your application and to your personal statement, which allows whoever's really a personal statement, allows the interviewer to see who you really are. So, and then I was going to mention, especially with COVID, I'm sure it's quite difficult if you've been trying to find a placement. And it's quite hard to find placements with COVID because you can't really go in. And so medical projects, there's all sorts. You can do like virtual work experience. And medical projects does have a virtual work experience that you could do as well. And you could go on that and talk about what you learned on there, but then talk about how being like, for example, a doctor for a day made you feel. You could talk about the things you learned, the skills you learned there, and how you used it in other things. I was also going to mention that it's not necessarily having placements in medical, having a work experience in a medical setting as such. You could have a placement somewhere else that will teach you the skills that you need for medicine, and you could talk about this. So I was reading online about, as I do, and so a person mentioned that they'd had some work experience in a zoo, and they'd learned organization skills in the zoo, they'd learned like leadership skills and all sorts. And they mentioned this and how their interview was mostly about their work in the zoo, and this person got a place. So it's not what you've done, it's what you've learned and how you can apply that to medicine. So just link it in to teamwork, link it in to communication, link it into empathy. So it's about why are you a good fit for medicine, not what have you done so far. It's like, have you got the skills to be a good doctor? Have you got the skills to be a safe doctor? Have you got the skills to be a good team worker? Have you got the skills to be a good communicator? That's what medical schools want to learn from your work experience and not just what you've done. So may I have the next slide, please? And talking on reflection, you can get some information from this links on getting the most out of your work experience and why reflection is essential on your medical journey. So it's just like talking about how, you know, how you can reflect, really, it helps. And, you know, the best way of reflecting. And like I said, just write down your reflections. And because when you write them down, you can go over them, you can read them again, and then you can use them. Like you'll have them there when you're writing a personal statement, or you'll have them there when you're doing your interviews. And then you can just talk about it, because there's a bit of revision for you in that case, and you can just talk about it. And if you have any questions about how to reflect, you can ask if you're not entirely sure. But yet again, you can find out on the link there. So I think
I've just pasted it into the chat as well, so both
Excellent.
those links, like the students can get those, because I know you can't grab it from a screen share. So I've just popped it in the chat there as well. I think what you were talking about with the reflection part, I know we started this kind of webinar talking about how much work experience do we need, but that's not the question students should be asking themselves, really. When you kind of look into the heart of this webinar, the things that you're talking about, it's not about how much, it's about the quality, and even more important than the quality, it's how well you reflect on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think any students that have watched any of our webinars before, we must mention reflection at least 1,000 times in every single webinar that we do, because that's the really, really important bit. And a lot of students don't quite understand that. And like you said, even just with those little stories you gave then, students can have a tiny bit of work experience, but if they reflect on it really well and they communicate to whoever's reading their personal statement or whoever's talking to them at interview how it's going to make them a good medical student and a good doctor, then you're winning. But so it's really difficult for students to learn that. They think, oh, I need to see a surgery, I need to write down the most impressive hospital or the most impressive consultant name, but it's not about that, is it?
No, not at all. So because yet again, the reflection is one of those skills that will follow you forever. So like even in medical school, you have to reflect. So like I've done so many reflections, I don't even know. I feel like I'm a pro of them now. But yeah, you reflect on everything. And like in cases, when you send a case, you reflect. When you've done a placement, you reflect on it. So it's one of those skills that's amazing to learn now, just because you're going to need it in medical school and you're going to need it after. And like with the work experience, then like it's really easy to get hung up on like how much you have, but yet again, it's the quality of what you have and what you've learned from it. It's what were you exposed to and what have you learned from that? So that's more important than like, ticking boxes in that case, because it doesn't sell you. You're selling yourself to the interviewer, you're selling yourself to medical school. And to be honest, if you had a choice between, say, someone that just lists, I don't know, a load of places, or someone who tells you, why am I a good fit? Why would you want me in your medical school? Giving me the reasons why, I should accept them. You're more likely to go for the person who says, this is why I'm a good fit for you, because you feel like you know more about them than the list person, if that makes sense. So that's why it's about reflection.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's very easy for us to sit here and be like, oh, this is the kind of work experience you can get. That's really easy for us to say, but we know how difficult it is to find work experience in normal times, and it's 10 times harder in these kind of COVID times as well. Absolutely. We did a webinar. I don't want to leave students kind of, here's a list, go and find some of that. That's really difficult for us to do. So if you actually go back and look at one of the past webinars we did how to find work experience during COVID. So we did a whole webinar on all of these things that we were talking about. So all these different types of work experience, we went through how to go and find those, how to go and get those. So if you sat there as a student thinking, oh my God, like, yeah, it's fine telling us to go and get work experience, but how do I do that? Go and watch that webinar. And I know that we've just kind of spent 5-10 minutes talking about reflection, and you'll be sat there thinking, well, you haven't told me how to reflect, or you haven't given me examples of how to reflect. Again, we did a separate webinar on that, just so you've got both elements. Hopefully from this, you should understand that it's not the quantity of work experience that's important, and hopefully we can point you towards how to go and find the work experience, and then how to reflect on that work experience well. So we've given you 3 tools in the space of the last 26 minutes. So hopefully that's quite a useful set of tools, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Should we open it up to questions? Because I know it's easy for us to kind of talk, but I think we want to answer as many student questions as possible. We know that everyone has individual circumstances when it comes to work experience. So let's try and answer a few of the questions. So let me bring up the Q&A box. Can you see that on the screen if I've got that on the screen there? Or can you just see the slides?
Just the slides.
That's fine. I'll read the questions out if you want. So I'll just start at the top with the most popular one. Would you be able to just have virtual work experience, or is physical and necessary too?
I'd say like having physical work experience is not necessarily like important. I feel, yet again, like I know people that have gone into medical school without any experience, like without any like official work experience as such. So even just having virtual work experience and yet again being able to go reflect on it, like learn what you've like go over what you've learned from it and like how you can apply that to medical school is more important than being in hospital. And yet again with COVID, I think medical schools are quite aware of the fact that it's really difficult at the moment to find um, placements. So I don't think anyone's going to hold it against you if you've done a virtual work experience over a physical one if you can't find a physical one. So, I mean, if you can find a physical one, then yes, absolutely go for it. But if you can't, I don't think you're at any disadvantage going like you doing a virtual work experience, to be honest.
Yeah, it's been almost impossible. We know it's been almost impossible to find physical work experience, and that's why we've had to run online work experience ourselves this last year. But again, as long as you can pick things out of it well and reflect on them well, you'll be absolutely fine. Just learn to do that reflection bit really well, and you'll be absolutely fine. Next one down is, do you think that once all the restrictions are put to an end, hospitals and GP surgeries will allow students to do work experience with them?
Hopefully. I think it'll be a bit difficult still because it's just going to take time to get back to normal. But hopefully they do. Fingers crossed. To be honest, I can't like sit here and say, yeah, absolutely, it's going to be fine. I'm just hoping that they do because it's obviously going to be very useful. But I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of the students that we speak to and a lot of the doctors that we work with as well, they're fully aware that when restrictions start to ease, they will have students back in, and that's just from the doctors we've spoken to. They have been in your position at one point. They know you need work experience, and they are willing to give it. They're just not able to give it at the moment. So I think as soon as the restrictions ease, give it a bit of time, and students will be back in hospitals again, and they'll be back in the GP surgeries and back in the kind of the nursing homes and care homes and things. So yeah, just give it time. Next one is doing the GP live course alone enough work experience, or do I need to do more? I guess I'll take that one, given it's our course. It's a really, really good starting point. I'd always recommend, whether you've done our course or somebody else's course, or you've had physical work experience, trying to get a couple just so you've got things to compare and contrast. But again, if you've only done the GP live course, then you've only got that to reflect on. And if you can pull the things out of that, like we teach you on the course, then you're going to know how to use it in your application form, which is really important. Cool. What work experience can we get this summer during COVID, because shadowing may not be an option? What I'll do, I'll try and find a link to our past webinar, which is the Finding Work Experience During COVID, because that will help answer your question, Amna. So maybe while you're answering the next question, Debbie, I'll try and find a link to that one if you want.
Yeah.
So next question is, with medicine becoming increasingly competitive, how could you make yourself stand out with your experiences when the majority of applicants are likely to have similar experiences to you? It's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, because it's quite difficult because most people applying for medicine will have the same grades as you, they would have done the same work experience. And yet again, this is where the quality of your reflection comes in, because not necessarily everyone will take away from their work experience the same things. And it's about, yet again, showing what you can apply to how you can apply what you've learnt to medical school. So it's really hard, but it's, I don't know, I'd say like let as much of your personality as you can shine in your personal statement and in your interview. Like, it's quite easy for me to sit here and talk about that now because it's all that back in the past for me, but like it's just being comfortable and just letting yourself shine, because they want to see the person and not the, you know, the robot that you think they want. They want to see you. So it's just about letting your personality shine through your work, your personal statement, and your interviews. And also like trying to get like, to be honest, to stand out, you don't have to go the route everyone else is going. You could do something else entirely, something entirely different. Like I said, someone walked on a Zoom. So you could do something like that, just something different to the norm, for example. And it grabs the whoever's reading your personal statement, it grabs their attention, and it grabs your interviewer's attention as well. So
Cool. I'm just I'll stop my screen share just so I can share the links and things as well. So, let's see, if I can share. I want to share YouTube channel. It's being so annoying, Celine. Apologies. Normally super slick with these things, but obviously not today. Right, okay, cool, there we go. So hopefully, can you see that? YouTube channel. I'll copy this link and I'll put it in the chat as well, because that's where we have the webinars on finding work experience during COVID. So if you go down to past webinars, there's like tons in here. So if you have a look in there, there's definitely one on reflection. So how to reflect. There's definitely one on finding work experience during COVID. There might even be two. So have a look there. The link's there for you. Cool. Yeah. Right. Next question. Let's look. Are irrelevant but commendable achievements good to include in your personal statement, e.g. winning a spelling bee or creative writing competition?
That's also a difficult one, because I don't know that you have enough words to include something like less irreverent. But yet again, you could talk about how winning the spelling bee, like what it added, like, okay, it made my communication skills better because I had to learn all these words and learn how to, like, you know, it's about how you spin it and sell your story. If I should say it that way, it sounds really, really odd, but it's about selling yourself to the medical school you're applying to. So yeah, so absolutely, yeah, winning a creative writing contest, for example, absolutely great for communication skills, because someone read it and understood what you're trying to say, and they thought it was amazing, and they gave you an award for it. So you could talk about how, yeah, absolutely helped my communication skills. So you could add it as long as you tie it into these like soft skills that the medical school wants you to have. So yeah, and you have enough words on your personal statement then.
You've got to play the game. It's a little bit of a game, and learning to spin things in the right way is really important. It is competitive, but that's the challenge. That is part of the game, is taking those things and spinning them into something that they want to hear. And makes you stand out. So there's lots of things you can do it with. So even if it's not direct medical work experience, then, you know, as long as you use it in the right way, then fine. And if you don't know how to use it in the right way, then seek help. You know, try and get a mentor. Try and speak to a current medical student or a current doctor, or come and speak to us. Speak to our admissions kind of tutors and things, because it's difficult sometimes to know how to spin it if you're not used to that. Then, you know, just seek a bit of extra advice from somebody else. Cool. I'll probably take maybe 4 or 5 more questions, and then we'll probably just kind of finish on. I'll let people know about the upcoming webinar in a couple of weeks' time as well. So in terms of reflection and personal statements, how do you make sure you don't repeat what skills you saw with each experience you mention?
Okay, so you might not necessarily have to put in all your experiences. Like I said, you don't want to turn it into a list. You could just pick like the 2 most, you know, the 2 that you learned the most from, or like, you know, the 2 most personal to you, or the 2 that you feel like, you know, really showcase what medicine is about to you, and which you can in turn use to showcase what you know about medicine and why you fit in, like, why you would fit in this medical school. So yeah, again, it's not about like a list and like listing things, but I've generally advised that if you're writing your personal statement, like with one, if you say you put 2 experiences in, for example, you'd like say, I learned this, this, and this. Like, obviously, you'd write a story, you didn't just list what you learned. You'd make it, you'd sell yourself to the school. And then, like with the other experience, you mentioned other skills, you don't necessarily repeat what you did before. So you just pick the experiences that mean the most to you and that you've learned the most from. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think once you start drafting your personal statement, you realize you've only got, what, 4,000 characters. You'll very quickly realize that you can't list all of your work experience in there. And you're going to have to pick out your best 3, 4, maybe 5 experiences at the most. So you're just not going to be able to get it all in there. So it's about making a diary over the next kind of few months whilst you're gathering your work experience, writing everything down, and then thinking, right, okay, what were the best experiences I had? And then just put those in your personal statement. So you might have 30 or 40 little reflection pieces by the end of summer, but you're only going to use 3 or 4 of them, really. What is the best way to find work experience? Go and watch the YouTube webinar on finding work experience. That's the best way. Lots of tips in there. What's better for universities? An intensive short-term work experience shadowing or less intense long-term work experience shadowing?
Yeah, again, it's not necessarily about the quantity or like, if it's short or long or whatever. I feel like most unis tend to judge you on how well you've utilized your work experience and not like how much you've actually done, because it's about selling yourself. And so you sell yourself in the best way possible, like, oh, I learned this, I did this, I saw this, and it made me think about this, it made me feel this way, so like I'm going to do this next time, for example, which is generally how a reflection goes. So if you do that, I feel like it doesn't matter what you've done, as long as you can pick out the skills you've learned from it and or what you've learned from it and how you'd apply it to, I don't know, medical school, or how you'd apply it to life, or how you'd apply it to medical practice in the future, or how you'd apply it to being like working in a team, for example. Yeah, I feel like that's just a better advertisement for yourself than what you've done.
Cool. Someone's asked, where's it gone? So I just saw a question there that was quite a good question, which was, how do you draft an email or a letter to a doctor, GP, surgery, hospital if you're looking for work experience? Did you have to do that when you were applying?
I did, but to be honest, like I literally just asked absolutely everyone, like all the nurses I knew. It's like, oh my gosh, can you ask someone to, can I go shadow someone in your hospital? And like I literally wrote emails, and it's just introducing yourself, being polite, of course, and then just asking like, oh, you're interested in medicine and you'd like to learn certain, like you want to see what medicine's about, and if it's a good fit for you or if you're a good fit for medicine, and that they mind if you shadow them, that it's okay. And actually, like I said, it doesn't have to be the doctors themselves. If they say no, you're like, can I shadow your admin team? And it could be a way of getting in there, because they might not let you, go sit in with them because it's quite hard yet again to find experience. But it could be, can I sit with the practice nurse? Can I sit with your admin team just to see how it works and showing skills like that? So I literally just ask absolutely everyone, if they have any like links. So yeah.
I don't know if you can share files on Zoom. Have you ever done that before? Because I've got a template email that students can use to email GP surgeries. Let me see if I can do that.
Maybe if you drag it into the chat box, can you do that?
I think that'll work.
No.
No, what I'll quickly do is I'll share my screen, but what I'll do is I'll include this in the email once we send it out tomorrow. So with the slides, we'll send a copy of this with it as well. So can you see that on your screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like a template email that we drafted for students. So if you're applying to work to a GP practice or to a hospital and you're trying to get work experience, this is just a little bit of a template that you can use, and it gives you some hints and tips of how best to structure it as well. probably going to be really difficult to read in kind of the next kind of 10 seconds. So I'll put this in the email that we send out to the slides tomorrow. And I've got another one for if you need to ring up GP surgeries, like a bit of a call script, if you're going to call a GP surgery, and you know how to ask for work experience. So some students might find that quite useful. Cool. Right, let's find one last question. It's nearly 1:45. I don't want to take over everybody's evenings, so let's have a quick look. Does having no contacts who work in the medical field put me at a disadvantage to those with family or friends who have doctors, you know, in hospitals?
No, honestly, I don't think it does. Like I said, like when I was applying for medical school and when I was looking for work experience, it was like, it sounds so random, but it was the most random people I was asking, like my friends' moms and things like that. So like no one in my family was in the medical field at that time. Like we've got a few more nurses now, but like there was no one in the medical field. So I did find it hard to like get access in, but it's just about asking absolutely everyone. But I don't think it puts you at a disadvantage necessarily. Like you can just send an email to the GP surgeries around you. You can send an email to like the PALS team in the hospital, or like, you know, just someone. You can send an email to just someone, like just be like, oh, can you just take me, please? And you never know, they might say yes. So I don't think it does.
No, you're going to have to work a bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact. But as long as you put that hard work in, you will find somebody who will take you. But you've just got to be willing to accept a few rejections, which can be difficult, and just keep asking and keep going and keep going and keep going, and you'll find somebody that does take you. Just don't give up with that.
Absolutely.
Cool. Very conscious of everybody's time, so I'll just wrap up, just let everyone know the next webinar is in a couple of weeks' time, 30th of June. It's about the UCAT, so if anybody's taking the UCAT, we're going to have a look at some abstract and some verbal reasoning questions, and we're going to go through and just, you know, literally learn how to answer those types of questions. That's it for this evening. Thank you very much for joining us, Debbie. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see everybody in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.